Season 4 Episode 8 of Succession has recently been released, and I think it's safe to say that it's definitely one of the best episodes in the show's history, providing a really uncomfortable experience in watching all of the characters having to deal with moral dilemmas, political differences, and also each other. This episode is the one that I feel truly marked the beginning of the end. After watching this episode, there was one thing that stuck out to me a lot. Every single character was using a phone more than usual, and whether it be the making of a call or the receiving of a call, the way that the device was used throughout it was so different to how we've seen them used before. Each phone call impacted the plot. I know it sounds weird, but trust me on this. So with that, I thought I'd break down and explain the importance of a phone call in this episode and how it touched every single main character. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. In episode 8 of the final season of the show, I felt like phones were used in a way like we'd never seen before. Whether that was an influx of calls and messages, fake phone calls, actual phone calls that revealed information, revenge calls, or calls celebrating success, all of these types of phone calls happened in the runtime, and it was interesting to see how and why they played out. Let's start off with Tom and the way that phone calls impacted his character development in the episode. We knew that this episode was going to be a big one for Tom, especially considering that all throughout the last episode we saw that he was basically saying that he was dreading election night, and this was backed up and was made apparent from the moment that we laid eyes on him when this one began. The way in which phones supported Tom's inclusion was by having them as a constant thing that was there, and something that wasn't able to be avoided, whether that be getting calls from Kendall from the office despite being in the same building, having calls from people down on the floor and even text messages, and the uncomfortable nature of it even transferred across the screen well, with the use of the vibration sound constantly going off and the phone alert sound too, showing just how much of a stressful time that it was for him. We didn't even really need to see his face, body language, or hear his voice, because when you're receiving that many calls and notifications, it's anxiety-inducing anyway. This was best summed up as well right at the end of the episode, where we saw that Tom was holding not one, not two, but 3 individual phones, highlighting the hold that they did have over him throughout the entirety of the episode, and the fact that there was no escape from the night that he was dreading for such a long time. He wanted to escape, and he couldn't, and the phones acted as a tool for that. A way in which phones were used in a different way in this episode was with Shiv. Shiv's calls were being used more as a weapon and the tool for scheming. The first call that we saw her make was to Mattson, showing which side of the fence she was truly on and that she was continuing to look out for herself. Her first and last call was to Lucas, and it was the person that she'd been working with the entire time to bring the brothers down. However, the one right at the end was her confirming that she wanted to hit them with everything that they had. It's funny because the only phone call that she didn't make in the episode and the one that she pretended to make proved to cause the most damage when compared to any call that she made. If she had have phoned Nate, then she wouldn't have been in the situation at the end where she was outed by Greg. She viewed calls as weapons. She kept Mattson informed with one, planned further schemes with Mattson with another, and chose to not phone Nate because she knew of the power that it had and that her plan could come crumbling down with it. Kendall most probably had the most important phone call in the whole episode, as it looks set to change the trajectory of the story in the final couple of episodes. But as well as that, he had other phone calls, such as to Rava and also Tom. The calls to Rava were a set which grounded him and drew him back to the more human side of himself. Kendall was extremely conflicted within his mind in this episode, and we saw that despite the fact that he wanted to keep a hold of Waystar and lead the company, which meant that the GoJo deal needed to be blocked, he knew that he couldn't agree with Mencken and be a facilitator in helping him become POTUS. This was due to the idea of his daughter growing up in a country that was led by somebody like Mencken. This was best represented with the 2 phone calls that we saw him have with Rava. They were calmer, more human, and we saw the softer tone in his voice. Completely different to how we saw him when he was speaking with Tom, a time where he didn't truly know what he wanted at that point. However, when he was speaking with Rava, he did know what he wanted, but he just didn't act on it. The most important moment in the entire episode came with the phone call that he made to Nate when he stepped outside of the room, and we didn't even get to hear it. I feel we didn't get to hear it because it's far more impactful imagining what the both of them said to one another. We got to see it instead, and with that, we got to see all of the looks that Kendall was giving Shiv through the window as he was confused. And then we also got the final nail in the coffin moment where Greg revealed all to Kendall and that he knew that Shiv had been cozying up to Mattson in order to secure herself a position when GoJo acquired Waystar. This was what ultimately led Kendall to push his moral beliefs and political beliefs aside in order to put his personal gains at the forefront, even if that meant going against what he wanted for his daughter and the safety of her, showing that although he may not be the killer that Logan said he'd never be, he was the type of father that he was. This call also led Shiv being pushed to the side and for her scheming and revenge call to take place with Mattson, cementing the divide that's now between them all. Roman's phone calls were used for celebration and success. For example, we saw that Roman had no moral compass in this episode, and he was doing all that he could to get Mencken to win. He wanted him to win because it meant that he'd block the GoJo deal from going through, and the brothers would stay at the head of the company. The main calls that we saw Roman participate in was one that he made for Connor, and also another one that he was on the receiving end of from Mencken at the end. Both calls had positive effects. The call for Connor was to say that if he pulled out of the race then he would be able to have some kind of success moving forward, and he wasn't going to be a name that was tarnished after losing the election by what looked like it was going to be an extremely large amount. And the other call that Roman received at the end of the episode was from Mencken, where he thanked Roman and said that the both of them were going to go far together. Not at any point in the episode did Roman show any signs of stress. And the phone calls really reflected that, being completely positive ones that had no negative impact on him or his mindset. They were used to cause positive outcomes. It felt like phones were used as a tool in this episode to allow us to feel what was going on inside of the characters' heads, understand what their intentions were, and be the bridge between different characters and moments. Every large moment happened over a phone call, or was at least caused by one, and I found it particularly interesting that the episode unfolded in that way. It may have been deliberate, or it may not have, but with this show, I imagine it most probably was. The end of the show is upon us, and as sad as it is, I really can't wait to see how it's all going to end. So, there you have it, how Succession Season 4 Episode 8 showed the power of a phone call. If you want to see more videos such as endings explained, theories and predictions and character breakdowns, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.